Hello, and welcome to another episode on the Total Space Network. This is the second part of our interview with Rogue Space, so be sure to check out the first part. Links are in the description. Enjoy the show.
Ultimately, yeah, that's the idea. If we can't repair ourselves, what are we doing trying to repair somebody else? You know, but of course, this is down the road stuff. And yeah, we are in conversations with a couple of other partners for docking spaces. We are working with Orbital Assembly. They would like us to have some of our stuff stationed with them, and we will. But we're also talking to other partners that are going to enable us to have these a more distributed network of Orbots between low Earth orbit and geostationary orbit. So, short answer is yes. We're working on it. As far as I know, we're not planning on putting any kind of 3D printing up into space or anything. That's not our focus. It's not to say it'll never happen, but it's not our focus right this second. I could certainly see the use cases. The way we use 3D printing today is, printing out a frame or a part or something like that for us just to kind of mess around with. But there's, it's not Rocket Lab. It's, what's that other company? Relativity. I mean, they're printing their entire tanks. You know, they're printing their rockets. That's the launch industry, man. That's I'm on the receiving end of the launch industry, so I try to stay away from that hot mess. That's just
However,
that is a crowded space. No pun intended.
Having said that, there is value in the Orbots to be of modular design and modular construction. Because that way, if everything is modular, you can print anything on demand and have effectively machines that create Orbots. So you could have a printer that could create modular parts of Orbots and repair them. To
a degree, yes. To a certain degree, yes. There are pieces and parts that we would be able to do that with. I mean, like a satellite, it's a little more complicated, but yeah. Theoretically, there are certain aspects, there are certain pieces and things that we absolutely could replicate on orbit. But again, that's just not... Right now, the feasibility is more along the lines of have a storage locker, go grab a spare arm, and send the old one back for us to go fix it, you know. That's kind of the idea right this very second.
Sure.
Speaking of the launch industry, I read a release that you have booked a Firefly flight in 2023.
Yeah, we did work out a great deal with Firefly. I'm looking forward to seeing them get a couple more launches up. Let me tell you something. There are not many rocket companies that have gotten as far as what they did on their first launch.
They had their, I believe it was an engine issue at launch that they weren't getting the optimal thrust to push. But if they hadn't had that single one, I mean, the amount of control that they showed even in a failed launch was extremely impressive to my eyes. The fact that they were able to control it for that long with two engines and one of them just kind of sputtering out.
I don't know if they're going to ask for a better result, to be honest with you. Outside of getting
Orbit.
Yeah, Orbit would have been the better result, but
no, they're going to get there next time. I have very little doubt that they're going to hit their orbit on the second try.
Yeah, I agree.
It was very impressive.
I think they're going to get there. I mean,
How many
I
does
was
SpaceX
impressed
have?
as hell.
Say
I think
again?
how many failed did SpaceX have? Like 3 or something, 2 or 3.
Yeah, they had 3 or 4 fails before they hit.
Enough that Elon threw out of his own pocket instead of the fund that he'd assigned. It was, I mean, like, you can learn more from failure than you can from success.
The next 12 to 16 months are going to be very interesting. This is why we're in this round of funding. It is going to be interesting. Everything's led us to be at the point that we're at. I think we've gotten some pretty amazing progress, and I got to tell you, it's awesome being Rogue. I did a pitch this morning with a set of investors, and I got asked point blank about competition that's out there, and there are competitors. Now, whenever we talked several months back, there weren't hardly any competitors. There wasn't hardly anybody doing what we're doing. And they were mostly European companies. Now, all of a sudden, boom, everybody in the United States, and up sprouts this startup. Oh, we're going to do or robots in space, and we're going to do satellite repair and space debris. We're going to do this, and we're going to. It's like overnight it happened.
That follows the same trend that SpaceX suffered as well, and Space huge following, and they suffered the same trend. You know, they got these edge boosters, they're generations ahead of other companies because they were there. They had the idea first, and regardless of regardless of the competition, like we say in terms of YouTube, it's likely the people viewing our content are viewing the same content elsewhere. And you know that's pretty much the same thing for you guys. You know, the same people interested in the technology you guys are building. You guys are building the premier products, the first actual, or likely the first on orbit robot doing construction is a Rogue robot. And you know, regardless of people behind that trend, you guys have got such an advantage. And clearly, after speaking with Gael and Robert, you've made some really, really, really clever employment choices, and it seems that it's giving Rogue the edge, in my opinion.
Well, we certainly think so. I'd say another big advantage that we have compared to the others that have popped up is we have a customer. You know, we have, more importantly, we have a paying customer. And you know, I think that's the big thing that I would point out, and I'm hoping quarter 2, quarter 3 of next year, one of our biggest paying customers will be the Space Force, where we're going up there and we're dealing with some of that space debris that they've got. That they need to have it go dealt with. So we may not have the placard of Blue Origin spread across our founders' names like some of the others, but hey, it's easy to raise whenever you've got that name associated with you. I mean, they got money getting thrown at them, and that's great. I'm happy for them, but watch out, man, because we're not rogue. We're rogue for a reason. So they typically
in a world of
fast.
Political correctness, you guys have gone rogue.
Yep, that is very true. I don't think Rob, Gail, you guys can speak up, but I don't know of anything that we are doing any different than anybody else to harden and put our stuff into space. There's no it's not like we just went up to space yesterday. I mean, we've been doing this for 60, 70 years now, so it's not like it's new. We know what the problems are, we know what the issues are, and I make sure that I try to remind the team, look, our job is not to harden things for space. Our job is to design it, engineer it, and then we hand that over to our partner, and then they get it ready for space. Okay, so that's not a problem. It's a problem that we are always worried about. We're concerned with it, and we make sure and compensate for it. But our partner, like Nano Avionics, they're responsible for helping to make sure things are good to go in that area. And if they got to kick something back and we got to adjust our design, then that's what we do. But between Air Force Research Lab and Nano and our other partners in the space industry, I don't know of anything super special that we're doing now. We have a few ideas on some things that we can do that are special that we're not going to talk about here, but some pretty cool things actually. But it's not as the way we sit today. I'm not aware of anything much different than that anybody else would be doing. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. I know I'm probably going to get in trouble for saying damn, but I mean, it's like, okay, we can have it flying around at 17,000 miles an hour and maybe kill an astronaut or something, or we can burn it up in the upper atmosphere of the Earth.
And I agree. I think my angle was more from the Kessler effect. Really, like, I know that people are going to be upset that there is an environmental impact to deorbiting things, but at the same time, if Kessler effect takes place, that's going to set humanity back an incredible amount of time.
Oh, it would be massive.
Most of the things that are released upon deorbiting are going to remain in the high upper atmosphere, where there's a lot of those elements kind of floating around and drifting around anyways. And when you're talking about the massive things we're deorbiting, I mean, the biggest target that we've looked at so far, just kind of as a potential, is something like 850 kilograms, which seems large until you think about how big the shell of the outer atmosphere is.
Yeah.
So yes, if we deorbited every single piece of space debris within a year period, probably going to have some big effects on us. But the studies I've seen, and I will qualify it with that because I am not an expert in that field, do not seem to have a huge environmental impact on deorbiting of debris.
I really appreciate you clearing that up, because naturally we do sometimes get critics in the comments section. People are always welcome to just a public forum there. We ask that people are respectful, but past that, we open a public forum up. And I know that there is going to be people that will avoid now having to go to the comments section and start talking about the climate
I would
impacts.
love to see in the comments, though, like if anybody has any studies that point otherwise, I'd love to read it. I mean, part of my job, a large part of my job is reading new scientific studies on a daily basis. So I'm always up for being corrected if I am absolutely wrong in something. So
yeah,
and your citations.
I appreciate you taking the time to sort of go a little bit more off topic and just clear that up for us, really. Because I know that theoretically the future is in space, and that's clear with, like the Orbot plan for construction as an example. We've seen the Orbital Reef announced recently. There's the OAC Gateway Foundation stuff that you guys are participating in. And the future is in space, and deorbiting things is important to avoid that Kessler effect and really shut down humanity's plans for an incredible amount of things.
I think that when it comes to ultimately what we'd really like to do is get to a point where we're able to recycle in space. Wouldn't that be cool? I mean, wouldn't it be cool? Wouldn't it be cool to be able to take a piece of space debris, melt it down, separate out its elements, and then repurpose those raw materials back into the space economy?
So like
I think
a
that's pretty
rogue
cool.
junkyard on orbit.
Why not? I mean, we do it here on Earth. Why can't we do it in space?
It sounds like it would be a great pathfinder towards like asteroid mining, because we're going to have to figure out how to process asteroids in space at some point. Like that's one thing that a lot of people really dream about is going and making some money off of asteroids like Psyche and whatnot. So why not develop on-orbit recycling? Because it seems like it'd be a logical step on the pathway.
Believe it or not, that is on our roadmap. It's on our roadmap. I mean, we've talked about it. I'm talking to space satellite operators right now about exactly that. And there are greater ramifications, there are greater benefits than just simply the material. Think about the intellectual property contained within a spacecraft. Okay, well, if satellite servicing and orbital servicing and orbital robotics become more and more commonplace, theft of intellectual property becomes more and more possible in space. So the best way to do that is a shredder company for space. I mean, believe it or not, that's what we're talking about.
So you're talking about shredding and taking apart. Would that be separated into components and using a third party potentially returned to Earth to build?
No, I was being a little. I was just being a little. I was just being a little facetious there about the shredding part. The idea would be that over time, in time, we would have the systems and capabilities so that we would be able to capture a piece of debris or a dead satellite that we have the salvage rights to, where we'd be able to go and melt that thing down, take it apart and melt it down or destroy it in some kind of way where we'd be able to repurpose those raw materials.
I guess that does bring us back to the 3D printing question from before, though, because if we're getting to that stage, then yes, we will have 3D printers on orbit to turn it into usable components.
I tell you one thing, what you've got right there is easy millions of dollars in profit. There's about $103 million worth of space junk out there in melt value right now alone.
Yeah.
So
it's an insane amount. It's an insane amount of material. Did you say 100 million? It's got to be more than 100 million.
103 million, but I don't know when that statistic was formed.
No, I'm afraid. I'm afraid I can see. Every time you do this to me, Jeremy, I come with a load of listed questions, and we're like, "Yeah, this is the script. This is the show." And then every time you're just picking up my brain and giving out little teasers. And I sort of see, I know that supporting a healthy economy is important, and you're talking about salvaging stations on orbit. Is that something that would support an entire ecosystem within repurposing satellites? Is that sort of
Guys, that's what we're doing. And I think that's another big mistake that I think, again, I go back to the differentiators of Rogue compared to other groups. Rogue is what we are doing. We're not going after a market. Okay, this is the wrong way to go about building these nascent space companies and businesses, especially in our particular sector. We're not going after a market. Sure, we have to go get customers in a certain market, but what we really need to have in mind as Rogue, what we really are pursuing is the economy, the space economy. How do we support and benefit, and how do we profit from the economy? Well, you do it in a couple of different ways. You do it through transport. You do it through communications. You got to have a garbage man. You got to have a guy to go along and pick up, tow you somewhere, your AAA type services. All of those things feed into ultimately salvaging, getting raw materials, creating another system, selling off those materials into the in-space economy, using blockchain to secure the transactions that are being conducted in space whenever you don't have solid communication back to Earth. Setting up a communication system, a deep space network that's privatized, not just in low Earth orbit, but right here on the between the inner planets. These are all things that have to happen between Earth and the Moon and Mars, and these are all things that have to happen. And all the resources are not going to come just from Earth. They got to come from all over the place. So this is not about Rogue going and doing an inspection and observation on some piece of space debris and then capturing that piece of debris. It's really just a baby step toward this grander vision of supporting the economy. That is really what our end goal is. Building and supporting an economy of services, an economy of resources. That's what this is really about.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying. I was thinking about it from the other side. I was thinking you are trying to create I was thinking sort of... okay, so in essence, you guys are space innovators. Space innovators, is that the right term?
Trailblazers.
You're not
maybe.
Necessarily tapping into an existing market. You're creating a market. You're creating a want to. You're going to be bringing those materials back to Earth or repurposing them on orbit, and just generally supporting the next step forward as we do progress out to things like the orbital reef and the other private stations that have been proposed on orbit.
That's right. And a lot of these questions are going to be solved in a couple of different ways. One way that these questions about whether to bring it to Earth or keep it in space or whatever, that's an economic, environmental decision, or just straight makes sense decision, right? I mean, if it's just stupid to do it, then you just don't do it. And then there is maybe the decision goes a different way. Maybe it's not the best decision economically, but it supports the grander cause, the greater vision. Maybe it's something that benefits the entire community. That's okay. We can get our returns in that way. That it happens, not all the time, but it does happen. And you're right. We are creating markets. We are creating things. The difference, I would say, is that we know certain markets are going to get created, but they're all part of an economy. And we just want to try and do everything we can to enable, support, and drive that economy. We want to bring it to fruition, and we want to bring it into reality today, as soon as we possibly can. Because I think that is going to enable a lot of progress right here on Earth. That's how I think about it.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. We have run quite a bit over time, so I think it's a good time to wrap it up here. It's been totally awesome to have you, Jerome, Robert, and Gail, who actually had to leave already.
He actually had an engineering meeting, so he had to run. But thank you guys so much for having me. I really appreciate you guys taking the time. And we'll look forward to talking to you guys again soon.
Yeah, thanks for having us on.
Yeah. We'll have to have like some sort of social one sometime, just like an online game of MTG or something like that, or just do a D&D session. Here's an idea, right? Test TSN on how we would doing a space startup, and have Rob DM the session.
That would be. I could see where that would be. I could see where that would actually be pretty interesting. That would actually be a pretty interesting.
Stop giving Jeremy ideas.
It's like, well, we were going to launch today, but I rolled a nat 1, so.
All right, gents. Well, hey, thank you all so much for the time. Anything we can do to help you guys or what have you, just let us know.
Thank you guys for coming along.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time out of your day and whatnot to come and chat with us again.